What's happening with Russian economy? Dynamics of Russian economy have been quite counterintuitive. Many, including myself, expected the quick crash of the Russian currency. Indeed, USD-RUB exchange rate initially skyrocketed, but since the 10th of March ruble started growing quickly. One could assume that the ruble price somehow correlated with Russian military successes. Indeed, Russians were advancing quickly, and still, less quickly than almost everyone had expected. Plus, subsequent Russian retreat from the north in early April didn't stop the ruble rise. Much better and more obvious explanation would be, the price of the ruble dependent primarily on the trade balance rather than with what was happening on the Ukrainian battlefields. Strong ruble is a result of the trade surplus, and the Russian trade surplus skyrocketed in 2022. Trade balance depends on exports and imports. Now what does Russia export? That's the figures of 2017, but that's good enough to see the structure of its exports. It's overwhelmingly raw materials, fossil fuels, ore, metals, mineral fertilizers, very little machinery or equipment. Now let's have a look on Russian import structure. It's nearly reverse. Machinery, equipment, components. It's not only the consumption products but also pretty much everything that is necessary to keep the Russian industry going, from the machine tools to the cassette bearings. To illustrate my thesis, I'll give you some examples from Russian civilian machinery, military machinery and transport. NB, this is not a proof, that's an illustration. Let's start with civilian machinery. See an interview with the trade union leader of the AvtoVAZ car producer.
Все поточные линии, все посты оборудованы, например, сжатым воздухом. Все это делает на сегодняшний день отличная немецкая фирма Fest. Будут у нас запчасти для этого или нет, не знаю. Я больше чем уверен, что они тоже присоединятся к эмбарго. Это шланги высокого давления, это сепараторы, это все технологическая оснастка. Представьте, если завтра порвется шланг, и его нельзя будет заменить. Вроде бы ерунда, но ставь другой. Так их нету. У нас производства нету в России. Можно поставить другой, но тогда придется менять муфту, менять насос, менять сепаратор. Остановка данного, скажем так, рабочего поста будет катастрофической. Вот мне ребята дали список, который 100% не производят у нас на заводе. Колодки, главный тормозной цилиндр, клапана, сальники, ремни, подушка безопасности, пиропатроны, руль, АБС, генератор, стартер, ступица, термостат, ограничители дверей. Маленькая железная штука с пластиковой.
И у нас где происходит? Тоже Китай или это...
Нет, производителя. Ну, отчасти вот это точно так же, как с блоком управления Bosch. Это, возможно, производство здесь, но все оно производится из импортных комплектующих. Не только Испания, Турция, Италия, Франция, много всяких, Швейцария. У нас сейчас вот возникли проблемы с болтами. Вот, кажется, мелочь.
Мы тоже свои не делаем?
Делаем. Из чего? Хорошо, сталь легированная, катанку делаем. А обрабатывается она чем? Все твердосплавы идут.
Now let's do Russian military industry. That's a vacancy description of a construction bureau designing missiles. They are looking for a technician who would be able to write software for machines operating on numeric 840D, Siemens, and Heidenhaus software. The massive use of Western, specifically German machines and software in the Russian military industry, including missiles and rockets, isn't secret. It's openly shown on the Russian TV. Heidenhaus. For your information, this Heidenhaus using colony plants in Ekaterinburg is a produce of the Russian air defense systems, including the S-300. There's a massive evidence that most of software used on Russian programmable machines in the military industry is either Siemens, Heidenhaus. Discussions of the Russian military capacities miss one crucial element: its total dependency upon the technological import, and vice versa. Discussions on the EU-Russia relations miss the economic dependency of so many European producers upon the technological export to Russia. Strange behavior of Germany during the war in Ukraine might make more sense if we consider that German and Russian economies are surprisingly compatible. Indeed, German economy may have been a major benefactor of Putin's militarism. 1. Putin builds the army. 2. Pumps cash into the military-industrial complex. 3. Massive purchases of German machines, tools, components. It was the Germany that was the main provider of machine tools for the Russian industry and specifically for Putin's rearmament program. See a report of Swedish Defense Research Agency, Tomas Mamlov, The Russian Machine Tool Industry Prospects for a Turnaround, February 2019. German industrial producers lobbied the government for rapprochement with Russia. Consider Christian Thuns of DMG Mori, 2015. We are very effectively working on building relations with Russian politicians and try to influence on the German politicians. Christian Thuns, who talked on lobbying the German politicians, to the extent it is possible, in 2015, after Crimea, when the war in Ukraine was already going, is now the chairman of the executive board of the DMG Mori. In this 2020 article, DMG Mori was described as the main producer of the machine tools for the Russian military industry before the rise of Russian state-controlled Stan Company. I think this is an exaggeration. Still, that's a thing to consider. While Germany was the major supplier of machine tools and equipment for the Putin's military-industrial complex, France was also quite important as a supplier of armaments and components. See the Investigate Europe material. Now let's do transport. Russia is not the upvolder with nukes. It's the Brazil with railways, equals absolutely reliant on railways. Railways are the main means of 1. Cargo. 2. Long-distance passenger. 3. To the lesser extent, daily commuting within large urban agglomerations. New Russian cargo trains use cassette bearing. In 2022 there were only 3 producers in Russia. Joint venture with the American Timken, joint venture with the subsidiary of the American Amstedrail, Swedish SKF. They all stopped production. I gave 3 brief illustrations of Russian total dependency upon technological importing. 1. Civilian machinery. 2. Military machinery. 3. Transport. After the start of the war, the technological import stopped nearly completely, even in industries not touched by sanctions. After the 26th of February, 2 things happened. 1. Sudden and almost complete obliteration of import. 2. Actual increase in the export value, partially due to the rising prices on raw materials. As a result, Russian trade surplus skyrocketed. See the graph, and the ruble grew stronger. Paradoxically enough, the growth of raw materials export in combination with obliteration of technological import boosted the trade surplus. But this situation is simply unsustainable. Russia can't do without the technological import. It can't even sustain its fossil fuel export. This is a very illustrative case. Nord Stream gas supply decreased by 40%. Why? Siemens was supposed to repair a gas compressor and deliver it back to Russia, but due to the Canadian sanctions it can't, so the supply decreased dramatically. Now they're working on a solution. Now let's sum up. Why has ruble grown stronger? 1. You can't judge the Russian economic dynamics on the monetary indicators. 2. Trade surplus skyrocketed due to the export booming and import reduced dramatically. 3. This situation is unsustainable. Russia can't do without import. How is Russia dependent upon import? 1. Civilian manufacturing. 2. Military manufacturing. 3. Transport. Are all critically dependent upon imported tools and components, although the main choke points vary. Russian UAVs are component dependent rather than tool dependent, for example. Why is Germany supporting Russia? Because their economies are so compatible. Putin's militarism creates demand on German precision manufacturing tools and components. Thus German industrialists try to influence German politicians to be pro-Russian to the extent it is possible. Why is France advocating for peace? because it helped to keep Putin's military machine going after Crimea. After the 2014, it became much harder for the Russian military to get components for their industry. Fortunately, the French obliged and issued all the necessary licenses. Why China can't compensate for the loss of European suppliers? Because Russian military producers didn't want it and the state didn't allow it. On public, Putin conflicted with Europe and befriended China. In practice, he didn't allow to switch to the Chinese technological import. Theoretically, Russian state imposed heavy import substitution requirements for the tools for the military industry. In practice, though, the law is used selectively. You won't be really jailed for supplying a German tool pretending it's Russian, but you will be jailed for Chinese. According to the law, supplying a foreign-produced tool as Russian to meet the import substitution requirement is fraud. But Russia has a rule by law, not of law. The law is used selectively. If you supply German stuff, it won't be applied. Chinese though, to the jail you go. Hypothesis: friendship with China is a political project. It's quite possible that the Russian political leadership and the upper bureaucracy don't really trust the Chinese machines, tools and components as much as the Western. National divergence. Russian economy is falling, but it's falling unevenly. Consider a visualization of the unemployment prognosis by a Russian state think tank. There is a negative correlation between the economic complexity and the prognosis of unemployment increase. Consider these two clusters of losers: Volga cluster, Tatarstan, Samara, Ulyanovsk, and Kaluga. What unites them? Complex non-military machinery production. This sector is obliterated. Everyone who specialized on complex non-military manufacturing is destroyed by the war. Let's compare Kaluga, red, with nearby, Tula, yellow. They are both heavily industrialized, but Kaluga is obliterated and Tula is doing okayish. Why? Tula is a cluster of military industry, while Kaluga made its regional economic miracle, becoming a major car production cluster. Who's doing okayish macroeconomically? The agrarian south, huge yellow area to the south of Moscow. They didn't suffer that much. Moreover, according to the info I can't prove, some regional elites of southwest regions, especially in Rostov, are the major benefactors of the war. Look at this map again. It doesn't only reflect the current macroeconomic situation in Russia, it's also reflecting a very long and fundamental trend. Russia is shrinking southwestward, with the demographic and economic center gradually shifting in direction of Krasnodar. Now who's doing the best unemployment-wise? Look at the green. Those are poor and underdeveloped ethnic regions. Caucasus, Tuva, Astrakhan. That's Putin's cannon fodder. Much of the local youth will be recycled in Ukraine, and those who don't will at least be employed in the army. That's a powerful signal for the Russian regions. Your specialization determines your fate. You serve as the cannon fodder or produce armament, you survive. You build a complex civilian manufacturing, especially with FDI help, you get obliterated. Lesson for the future. It's not only about Russia going the North Korea scenario right now. It's also about the signal Russian business, officials and, let's be honest, the people are getting, which is, the best way to survive is to serve the military machine of the state. Self-reliance is suicidal. Should Russian Empire survive, its imperial ethos will be very much reinforced. On regional level, on company level, on personal level, those who serve the war are doing the best. There is no salvation beyond the state and its military machine. That's what Russians gonna learn. Indeed, this is exactly the reason why Russian imperialism and militarism exists in the first place. Because those who serve the war machine are being systematically rewarded, and those who pursue other strategies are systematically selected out. They'll be selected out again. Here I gave only few preliminary considerations regarding the Russian regional dynamics based on one single indicator: unemployment prognosis by a Russian gov think tank. End of thread.